Andar's had a really good charting system for years and years and years. We recently redeveloped the charting system with high charts. That was a number of years ago now, so we've been using high charts as our charting system for quite some time. So all of the charts you're going to see now are coming from that high charts model. They're much more interactive, they're much more visually dynamic, and really more of a modern style of chart. So thought it was a good idea to throw this out there, let everybody see some of the charts that are out there that maybe you're not using, maybe some of the features that haven't popped up in some of these charts, talk about some customizations, and then there's one, I'm going to pull a marketing trick here and sell something without selling it at the very end of the process, not sales. But there's a really cool feature as I was preparing for this webinar that I kind of discovered, and I kind of figured if I didn't know too much about it, I don't know how many of our customers knew about it. So it's a really cool, it's a really powerful feature. So we'll jump back into that. So as Luke alluded to, the first section we'll look at are charts, standard charts in Andar. So there are a lot of charts. I've got a dashboard on my screen right now with just a bunch of charts that I added for demonstration purposes. We have a bunch of dashboards that already have charts installed on them. A lot of the topics and tips and tricks and everything that we'll talk about are kind of universal to charts across bio tabs, dashboards, wherever you want to put them. So, but I'm just going to use this dashboard for demonstration purposes. One of the things that in BioTabs and in my BioTab and dashboard webinar previously, one of the things that we kind of covered was adding apps to a BioTab or dashboard. So we're really going to be adding apps to either BioTabs or dashboards. Adding these apps is kind of the same across the board. So one of my tips and tricks here is to use this app category. I mentioned it in those other two, the BioTab and dashboard webinars. If you're looking for a fundraising dashboard app in this case, you can choose fundraising, and that narrows this list down to just the fundraising apps. So that's one of my tips and tricks. The other tip and trick is if you come into this app drop down and you just start typing, and this works across Andar. A lot of people already know this, but don't forget it if you do know that, and if you didn't, here's your instructions. If you, in any drop down, if you start typing, so I'm just going to start typing chart, it now jumps me to the first item that matches that word in this list. If you want to keep going and find more items that match, you can hit the equal key on your keyboard and it goes to the next one. So when I was building this dashboard, I was literally just going through and adding all of the different charts to this dashboard. This is what I was doing, and it's actually what landed me on this extract table chart. I was like, what is that? So that little trick opened my eyes up to something that I didn't even know existed, and it got lost in kind of a list of data. So if you do that little trick across Andar, it helps you, but in this case, it helped me stumble on this thing that we'll come back to at the end of the session. So those are a couple of little quick tips and tricks that I would recommend for finding charts across Andar in BioTabs or dashboards, and then adding them. The other thing that I want to point out is some of these charts rely on the settings on the app themselves. And again, I've kind of covered this in other webinars, but if you hit the little 3 light panel switch up here to turn on all of the settings for all of your apps, each one of these apps has its own settings. So for example, this campaign progress chart has its own settings here where you can set your campaign account and campaign year and all of this kind of stuff. So those are settings specific to the app, but there are a couple of apps out there that rely on settings outside of the app itself. These, I'll give you 2 really clear examples. This campaign progress chart, for example, this relies on having a campaign start and end date on your campaign account. So if I go back into the settings here really quickly, the campaign account is kind of the bucket of money that you're looking at. A lot of people have local campaign accounts, out of area campaign accounts, capital campaign accounts, endowment campaign account. So those are just like buckets from the finance side. They're buckets of money. But if you want to use this particular campaign progress chart, you have to put a campaign start and end date on that campaign account to kind of let the system know, hey, this is the start of your campaign year and this is the end of your campaign year. So that is kind of a hidden setting there. And the reason I bring that up is you can, if you have any questions about that, or if you want to learn more, you can always do a search in our support center for these different charts. So I populated a link on this article just to kind of jump me there. But if you do a keyword search for campaign progress chart, it'll jump you to this support page. And then down here in the settings, or in the description here, it's going to tell you some of the settings that you might need to have. This article was one that we revised relatively recently. So it's a little bit better documentation. It's a little more instructional. It doesn't go through every single setting or every single term in there. Doesn't tell you how to add the app. So we kind of condensed this one. But looking up these chart apps, searching for the chart name will typically result in a pretty good result for you. The other one I am using for an example here is the campaign run chart, which is this guy right here. This one tells us how many campaigns are running versus how many campaigns have been completed. So obviously it needs some data to rely on that, not just the data in the app itself, but it relies on data on your organization accounts. So to get a little bit more information about that, we've got, again, a little help article over here that kind of walks you through where do you add campaign dates, all of that kind of stuff, some of the app settings. So I kind of say all of that because some of these apps do rely on actual data in your database, whereas a lot of other charts are just charts. The settings are on the chart themselves. Okay. I'm not going to go through a ton of the settings on some of these apps because, again, we kind of covered that in the bio tabs and dashboards. Every app has its own set of settings. They're all slightly different. We might peek in here and there on a couple of these, but really this webinar is really to point out some of these apps that you may not know exist, and some tips and tricks on some of these. One thing I will point out, I've done this in the others, but I think it's really relevant in this instance as well. If you right-click on anywhere on one of these chart apps, you'll get a chart settings. And if you go into the chart settings, that's where you can control some of the appearance and the way the chart is laid out. You'll have some options specifically for the view of the chart itself. So if we want to see this in a donut, you can see the labels on the donut chart. That's what populated this guy right here. If you want to put the labels above the donut chart, that puts it up above. You can put it on the right, or if you want to clean that up entirely, you can just say, I don't want to see the labels. And when you hover over, you'll still get your values and percentages for this particular chart. You can change colors down here. So if I change this to theme 1, or if I go to the United Way theme, the new theme that we put out, changes it to the United Way worldwide color theme. Also, if there are numbers, and typically there are going to be numbers in here, if you want to see decimals or no decimals, you can choose the no decimal. So let's just, 75% versus 75.0%. So if you want that extra bit of information. Some of these charts also have the availability to switch between a different type, a chart type. And that's because a lot of these chart types use the same underlying data. It's just displaying it slightly differently. So a circle chart and a semicircle chart, obviously they're going to be the same thing. It's like a pie chart. We'll talk a little bit about pie charts and pictorial charts and all of those kinds of things in a couple minutes here. But some of these chart settings will allow you to toggle between a circle or a semicircle, or some like vertical or horizontal thermometers, those kinds of things. So lots of neat kind of visual display settings here in the charts that you can get into by right-clicking and going to chart settings. That's on any of these charts. If I do it in a bar chart, you can display them. The bars either vertically or horizontally. You get the values, you get the labels for the X and Y axis, and you get your color theme. So some visual cues there that you can play around with. Okay, so a couple of charts that I do want to point out that I think are a little less used and might be pretty useful. We'll start with this campaign progress chart. This is a really good one. It's one of those charts I think that gets overlooked, and it's a little confusing to look at first, but I think it answers a lot of questions that development folks might have. I remember when I was in my United Ways, one question is kind of how are we pacing from this year to last year, or from last year to the prior year? That's what this campaign progress chart does. So my database, the current year in my database is 2019, but what this is looking at is the pace of the campaign, again, from that campaign start date for the past 3 years. So you can see this is divided up into 12 intervals. These intervals are based on 30 days. So this is one that we'll take a look at these chart settings for a second. So we've got intervals, and that's going to be the groupings of days. So how many days do we want to break this down? If I wanted to do weekly and see, a pace for 1 week per interval, I could chunk this into 7 days. I had it set to 30 because I kind of that's monthly, right? Roughly 30 days is a month. So this gives me an idea how my campaign is trending every single month for the past 3 years. If I wanted to do this for 5 years, I could put in 5 years, and it'll give me a couple more series there. And then I always leave the tolerances at the standard there. If you want to read a little bit more about the tolerances, I think we've got that in our support documentation. And I also leave this as a cumulative total. So when I update this, it should now give me 5 years. Might take a second to load. But now what this chart should be doing, and let's see. Of course, it's going to take a little bit longer because I now put in 5 years. Let's see if I undo that and go back to 3. My computer is extra slow today. And wait for everything to load. What that chart will show, though, is the pace from year to year. So you can see is over the last 30 days, is this year's campaign going faster or slower? So in this example, in my test database here, you can see the first couple of months, oh, there it went to 5. It's a little behind right now, a little harder to see. Let's close a couple of these guys off just to make it easier to see. So in the 5th series, we were kind of dead even, 1.2 million, 1.219 million, so kind of dead even. In the 7th interval, so the 7th month from, or the 7th month from my campaign start date, I think my test database is set up as January is my campaign start date. So in July 2017, I had raised 1.7 million, but then in 2018, I was at 1.6 million. So in 2018, it was a little bit slower than 2017. And then towards the end, so this would have been September of those years, it started to catch back up, and actually 7.46, 7.72. So it started to get caught back up. So this chart, by putting a couple of start and end dates on your campaign accounts, will show you a pace of the past 3 or 5 years, or whatever you want to put in there. You saw me, this was one of my tips and tricks. If you want to narrow down the series on here, so you saw I had 5 years and I didn't care about those first 2 years, you can just click on a series and it will hide that series. A lot of times what will happen is if you've got something that is really, really crazy, like an outlier, you can click on the outlier year, and it'll kind of resize the entire chart for you. So if you do end up with a chart that has some outliers and you don't want to see that, or you just want to see a little bit closer comparison of, 16 and 17, you can click on each one of those years, hide them, and you get a little bit better visibility on 2016 and 2017. So that's especially useful in bar charts where you can kind of drill in and do some comparisons. I can do a 16 and 18 comparison if that's what I wanted to do. So without having to run any reports, I get a quick view of the pace of campaign years. So that one I thought was a pretty neat one. It often gets overlooked. Um, the other one that kind of got overlooked too, or it's newer, maybe hasn't been promoted as much, is this campaign started versus completed and upcoming, or campaign started and completed versus upcoming. What this chart shows you is campaigns that have a start date that have yet to finish, or any upcomings. So in this case, I've got 2 upcoming campaigns, and I've got 6 that are either started or completed. So kind of being in the thick of campaign season, but we can see that there are still 2 campaigns that are upcoming. With this one, if you click on one of the segments, so I clicked on the upcoming segment, and I've got 2 accounts there. You can see that these 2 companies have yet to kick off, and here are my start dates. So they kick off on New Year's Eve. If I click on the other segment, the started and completed segment, that shows me a list of all of the campaigns that are currently running or ones that have completed. So we can see all of these campaigns are ones that maybe we're kind of hands off at this point because they're running. There's no prep left to do. So that was the campaign started and completed. So again, that one relies on having start and end dates on your actual org accounts. Once you add those, then it kind of opens up some possibilities. So I thought that was a pretty neat one to talk about too. We've got the designation chart. That one's been around for a long time. There's lots of ways you can configure that. I won't go through too many settings on that one, just because it's been around for quite a while. Looks a lot prettier than the old version did with that high charts update. This one was a different one. So this particular chart app is called a count chart. And what it allows you to do is base this chart on things like numerical data. So on individual or organization, I have it set to organizations right now. You've got a numbers tab in the general tab, and that's where you can record whatever you want. With organizations, it tends to be number of employees and things like that, but you can have a whole bunch of different numerical information. You can have techniques. So techniques are things that, I used an agency speaker with this company and it was really effective, or it wasn't very effective. You could record those techniques on an organization or individual account. Demographics, those are all kind of user defined as well. So if you set up a demographic, you can actually run this chart app on a demographic itself. And then if you're using subscriptions in Andar, you can also base this on subscriptions as well. So let me cancel out of this. This chart, what I've got it set up, is just showing 2 different demographics. How many CEO calls in this test database were done by year, and how many agency speakers were done by year. So just at a quick glance, I can kind of see, in 2017, I did 5 CEO calls. In 2018, I only did 3, made that correction, and now we're back up to 8 in 2019. So that's all based on the techniques that I have checked off in this checkbox. Get back into my settings.
Quick question, Nate. Yeah. This is coming from Bailey. Are you saying that they're able to add data items to the list, or are those preset?
In this box right here, this is showing all of your technique types. So a lot of these are custom. They aren't standard. Some of them are standard, but you can add items to this technique types, for example, or the demographic types. You can add items to that table, and then you can choose them in this section here. So you have to first add the demographic to the table, add the checkbox to the organization account that gets that, and then you'll be able to use it in a chart. So it's customizable is what I guess the bottom line is. Good question. So that was the Count Chart app. That was, again, a little bit different. It pulls numerical information, techniques, demographics, and subscriptions by default. You can pull in any of those custom fields that you've created for those. Okay. We've got a couple churn charts. We've also got a dashboard for churn, so I won't go over a whole lot of that, but we've got these 2 churn chart churn charts. One is a history and one is a single year. We've done a couple of examples using the churn charts in those. So those are pretty, I think they're pretty customizable. It may not hit for everybody, but there's a little configuration that you can do to pick what counts as a lapsed donor. Everybody's definition of a lapsed donor is a little bit different. So there's a little bit of configuration that you can use for that. And then we also added this recovered, which would be donors that you lost but then gained back. So there's a recovered item in this churn chart as well. Couple more examples here. This leadership history chart. So again, I picked this one just as an example of, with a chart, you can learn a lot about your data without needing to run a report and kind of analyze it or pull it into Excel and do a chart in Excel with a pivot table and all that kind of stuff. This one's the leadership history chart. It relies on your leadership levels. So if you're not using leadership levels, I encourage you to use leadership levels. They're used throughout Andar in all kinds of different reports, data mining, and then obviously this chart. What I can tell from this chart right away is I may have, in 2017, I may have raised a little over $6 million according to this bar. 5.35 of that came from just my Tocqueville donors. So you can kind of infer a lot of data from a chart without looking at it in a table of data or having to do anything extra, right? Because this is a little skewed, right? I see that Tocqueville donors make up the majority of my campaigns. If I want to eliminate them and see what's kind of the breakdown of everybody else, again, I click on the Tocqueville row here, the series, and it removes that from my stacked bar chart. And now I can see, okay, so my low level or my high level are still pretty high, but everything else is fairly spaced out. So my base is pretty good other than my Tocqueville donors. So it's having these charts dynamically show or hide different series can help you learn a little bit more about your database. There's one here for sunburst, and I'm not going to pretend to fully understand sunburst. This is a really, from my brain, I'm sure a lot of people really understand this. I know Mark from Ottawa was a really big proponent of the sunburst chart. He created his own sunburst charts that were really, really cool. My brain has a hard time understanding and reading this one. But the idea is that you've got some interactivity with these charts. So I clicked on the business segment, and it shows me kind of a high level. So I've got business, manufacturing, and other. And then if I click back on business, it shows me, here's my residential, these are really hard to see, labs, agencies. So it's using my campaign structure to really show kind of the breakdown of dollars in this case. So if I hover over my manufacturing section here, my manufacturing section has raised sector has raised 1.4 million. 71,000 of that came from corporate. 1.365 came in employee. You can read the breakdown. So it's taking that table that we've had and putting in chart format, and it's allowing a little bit of interactivity where you get a little bit better visual there rather than just having it in that table format for our campaign summaries. This one you can drill into. You can click on segments. My campaign structure is pretty poor, so I don't have a whole lot of nice visuals for you, but you can click on one of the sectors or one of the nodes in your campaign structure, and it'll allow you to dig in a little bit deeper. That guy gets set up on, again, campaign structure. So I have to choose the campaign structure node up here. I have to choose which campaign I want it to account for, and then if I want checkoff or RUM, campaign types, there's some nice settings here. And I can show this as a pie chart or a sunburst chart. So this one relies on your campaign structure itself. So again, good data allows you to use good data in a chart as well. And then kind of the last one that I'll talk about before we move into some other charts and some Executive Plus examples here is one that I know comes up on the DB2 a lot. And that's one of the things that we've been trying to focus on, is creating some charts that help you prepare for DB2 a little bit better, but then see overall trends in your database. So this one is the number of donors history chart. So it's you can do it as a bar chart or a line chart. Pretty simple, straightforward chart. You can pick how many number of years you want. So if you wanted a 10-year history on how many donors you've had, this will show you just a simple trend of your donors. Again, I know that's something that gets asked a lot in DB2, so you could use some charts to help you formulate your DB2 report. I'm going to pause real quick for a drink and check in. Luke, do we have any other questions that came up?
We do actually have a couple of questions. Um, we have a couple on the progress chart. The first one
Yeah.
being for campaign date for the progress chart, our shows date when it was rolled over. Is there a way that the date can be changed?
Yeah, those dates. Let's see if I can remember my campaign account. Yeah. So I'm just going to look up my campaign account. It shows that because that's probably what you had on your campaign account when it got rolled over. So I think it's under. So I looked up my local campaign account. Oh, sorry, wrong dates. If I go to campaign and then campaign dates on your campaign account, you can control that right here. So you likely have, whenever you rolled over, that's what this start and end date are. They're coming at some point. You probably set it. It was set on a your campaign account from way back when. Every time you roll over, it's grabbing that rollover date. So you can come in here and adjust your start and end date on your campaign account just by going to the campaign dates on your actual campaign account. Yep.
Perfect. And then we have, does the campaign progress chart include non-campaign dollars or only campaign-related contributions? Also, is it possible to filter or select specific campaign types to display in the chart?
It does not. So it's going to pull in everything. So you can see the settings here. The settings don't allow you to like pull out employee or corporate or special event or any of that kind of stuff. It's going to pull everything in. So there's not a whole lot of customization on that one, but it's going to show the overall campaign in total.
Perfect. Then we also have, how does the number of donors in the history chart figure number of employees with individual donors?
So let's see. This is showing donors in total. So it's gonna, if you've got an employee or an individual that has made a pledge, they're a donor. So it doesn't matter if it's employee or individual, it counts number of donors. I think this also includes if you do a batch transaction, there's a number of donors field there that also includes. So if it's listed as a number of donor, if their number of donor is one or more on a transaction, it counts as a donor. Okay.
Perfect.
Okay. So the next little group here, we'll go through a couple of these. I won't go through many, but we do have some other charts, right? So it's not just for campaigners. It's not just for the resource development folks. We've got a finance one here for pledge versus receivable. It's called the pledge versus receivable chart. That one's a pretty good one because it shows when by month, it's got a rolling timeline here. It shows how many pledges have been collected and how much receivable has been collected. So that one's kind of for the finance folks. If you're doing prospecting, we've got a prospect funnel that shows you how many accounts exist in each one of the levels of your funnel. So I again have really bad data, but I've got one donor in my solicitation stage in this funnel, and if I click on it, I can see it's Stephen Vanderboer. So if you're using Andar's prospecting metrics, we've got a prospect funnel here as well. The transaction analysis is another one for finance folks. It shows how much has come in for ePledge versus non-ePledge, and I don't have great data in mind. If you are using the ePledge module, you would probably have something to show here in another series, but I don't. But that's a nice way to look at your transactions, whether they're coming from e-pledge or manual input or import files or any of that kind of stuff. So got a couple out there for finance folks, for prospecting folks, major gifts. We also have one for events. And again, I apologize for poor data, but if you're running a bunch of events, I've set this up to show my tickets for my CN Tower Climb event. And you can compare it if that's something that happens every single year. You kind of get a history of, again, pace every single year. How's this doing? So it's kind of neat. It's a little hard to understand. And when you have better data, it makes a lot more sense. But it also is broken down by intervals. So you can break this down. I think I had this broken down by months as well. Yes. So same as the campaign progress. So I've got the last 3 occurrences. So this event is recurring every year it happens. So I want to see the last 3 times that it occurred. I want to see the groupings of 30 days, so monthly, and then I want to see 12 intervals. So I want to see a full year. So again, that shows me kind of the pace of my events to know whether my tickets are selling at a higher or lower pace than the last time this event happened. We've also got a couple for surveys. This one, if you're using our survey module, this shows responses over time for a survey. So in the settings, you pick a survey. Again, you group it by intervals. In this case, I did 7 days. So I want to see, a weekly, like I want the interval to be a week, and I want to see 52 weeks. That's how this one's set up. So weekly, and I want to see 52 weeks. So really what that's showing me is a full year. So 20, November of 2024 to November of 2025. And I can see I had a bunch of survey responses on this week. So in June, the week of June 25th, I had 3 responses. In the following week, I had 2 responses, and then the following week, I had 8 responses. So if you're using surveys and you want to see how often your surveys are getting filled out, maybe you can pull the survey once it starts to kind of die out. The word cloud's a really interesting one as well. So if you're using surveys and you're gathering somebody's like text box response on a survey, you can throw that into a word cloud. And I just have a silly example here, but it's going to grab the most used word and it's going to put it largest. I think hopefully everybody knows what a word cloud is, but the most used words will show in larger fonts. So in this case, I've got 3 occurrences of the word thank, but I've only got 1 that has my name in there, 1 that says personal, 2 that say says. So if you've got a survey and you're gathering information from people, you can throw that into a survey word cloud, and that's the actual name of the app. So you can pull that survey response in. I'm not going to hit a lot on these 4. These guys are pretty neat. They're all volunteer related. We have a whole volunteer dashboard that's available. But if you're using either eVolunteer or just volunteer management without the web component, you've got a lot of charts that are out there to look at your opportunities, which ones are popular, which ones need some attention, so which ones are full. So these 2 opportunities are full versus these 9 still have spots available. So you've got a lot of volunteer opportunity charts that are out there as well. I'm going to bounce to Executive Plus really quickly. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on Executive Plus other than to show you a couple of different charts. I will preface this with Executive Plus requires the Executive Plus module, the license. So it is a separate module, and it also requires SQL coding. So not everybody knows SQL coding. That's okay. We're here to help if you want to create a custom chart. There are a couple of custom charts that only exist in Executive Plus right now. But if you have Executive Plus, then you've got access to the whole world of data, right? Any of those charts that I showed you previously were locked in with the settings. So the person who had asked about the progress chart, you're locked into those settings. You're not able to exclude corporate or employee or individual or whatever. But if you wanted to create a custom version of that, you can do that with Executive Plus. Depending on how difficult the SQL coding is, it can be a really quick Executive Plus query. I know some folks out there have some very extensive SQL coding skills, and you've done some amazing things. I would encourage you to reach out to one another to see if people have good Executive Plus queries that they can share. We've got our Slack channel. Some of you make contacts with other United Ways. There's some really good resources out there for some SQL coding. And then we also have our developers that can create a SQL query for you that you can pull into a chart. So that's the only sales pitch I'm going to do there. We've got thermometers, so that's a pretty standard one that has been used over and over again. We've already looked at bar charts. This circular chart is a new one. It's only available in Executive Plus right now, but what it does is if you have some coding, it will allow you to get kind of a KPI model here. So you can see that we've got corporate, employee, individual, other, and special. So imagine that we've got a goal for corporate giving for a campaign, a goal for employee giving, etc. What this does, it shows you for each ring what percentage of that goal is. So right now we're at 115% of our corporate goal. We're at 83% of our employee goal, 85 for individual, 51 for other, and 122 for special. So this circular gauge is a pretty cool tool to get a whole bunch of different rather than, how do I want to say it? Rather than having 2 or 3 or 5 different charts, you can put all 5 of those into one chart, reduce clutter, and you can see a whole bunch of like KPIs all in one spot. We did limit it to 5 because we found if we went any further than 5, the rings got really hard to see, too skinny, and all of that kind of stuff. So we did limit it to 5 here. I'm going to scroll down and see if there's another example of the word chart, word cloud. This is with an article. So I just went out and grabbed some kind of free resource for, I think this is Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. I just grabbed the full text that was out there for Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, threw it in an article, and wanted to see what the word cloud came out as. And again, you can see it counts 3,000 instances of the word said, and then 1,200 for Ford, which is a main character's name in that. So pretty neat. You can throw this in an article if you've got a whole bunch of words that you want to throw in there. For whatever reason, you can base this on an article as opposed to a survey. You can also do this if you're good with your SQL queries. Any piece of text in your database, you can query text. You can pull that into an Executive Plus query, and you can turn it into a word cloud. The next couple are really just showing similarities. Scatter plots, area charts, and line charts are all basically similar in how they're formulated. You can use the same SQL coding for each one of these and just display them in different ways. So this area chart is using the exact same SQL query as a line chart. It just looks a little bit different. So same exact Executive Plus query, just a different format. So you can experiment with some of that. Same thing goes along with these, the funnel, pie, donut, and pictorial chart. They're all the same Executive Plus coding. If you look at these, you can see, it's using the exact same coding. I've got 1,005 donors here, 1,005 donors here, 1,005 donors here, and 1,005 donors there. It's all the exact same coding. It's just a different way to display it. The reason I wanted to show this one, though, these in particular, is this pictorial chart. It uses an SVG file. So SVGs are a really specific file type. It's not all SVGs are created equal. So if you get one, if you get an SVG file, make sure you're getting it from a reputable spot. I get a lot of these free on the web. They do not show properly. And if they don't show properly, that's more than likely not your SQL coding. It's your file, your SVG file. So you might have to experiment with some SVG files. If you've got a marketing person that can produce SVG files in like Adobe, that's your best bet. If you're getting free ones, you might have to experiment a little because not all SVG files are the same. The last one is a map. So this one's another new one. It's kind of neat as well. Right, this particular SQL query is just pulling all of the United Ways and some agencies that I have in Pennsylvania. So it's pulling the addresses, it's geocoding it, and now I can see here are all my agencies that I have in my database, and here are all my United Ways in Pennsylvania. So there is a map in there that does the geocoding for you and throws it into a visual. So lots of potential ways that you could be using that as well. Um, okay, so that's Executive Plus. Again, I'm not going to go into a whole lot of detail with Executive Plus because there's a lot of SQL coding in there. If you've got questions, we've got a professional service team that can help you with some coding questions if you've got coding questions. And the last one, I know we're running a little low on time, or late on time, I should say. The last one is going to be a really cool one. So I'm going to pause, check in for any kind of big repeatable questions, and then show you this last one. So
Uh,
Luke, any? Yep.
yeah, just one question. Are there any default SVG files in Andar for the basic users?
There is one in there. It is, so if we go into the chart settings, if you don't have any SVG files, I don't know if I can delete it from this one from here. If you don't have any, there is an A. It's just a circle with an A in it. So by default, that's your default image. It doesn't have hearts or anything like that. These are all stuff that I pulled from online, but the generic one is just a circle with an A in it for Andar. So that is your default. Okay. Okay, this is the last one. This is cool. If everybody has to leave, that's okay. I understand. It's getting close to end of webinar time here. We are recording these, so I'll continue on. If you have to jump out, you can always come back and pick up at the 45-minute mark, and you'll see the end of it. But I would love if you guys could stay, because this is one of those ones that has existed for a little while, and I totally didn't know it existed until I was preparing for this webinar. It's called an extract table chart. That's the name of the app, Extract Table Chart. And what it does is it turns a data mining operation, the results of a data mining operation, into a chart for you. And I realize data mining isn't for everybody. I know it's not easy. Just bear with me for this one, because if you are able to get the data mining operation, this is a really, really cool way to turn a table of data into a usable chart that has all the benefits that we just talked about. So for example, I'm just going to show you this really quickly. This is a data mining operation, a really simple data mining operation that I created. I know it's ugly. We're working on it, but I'm just selecting organizations where they're active and they had some money in tracking parameters for a particular year, 2016. And then I'm extracting, and this is the key step in this whole process. This extract data, this is different when most of the time when you're doing a data mining operation, this step would be extract data and download. We don't need the download. We don't need the CSV file. What we're telling Andar to do here is just pull this data. So run our SQL query in the background and populate a table. And I've given my table a name of extract chart example. We don't want to download the extract, and we don't want to delete the extract table. So this is going to be a table that gets used over and over and over again, and that table exists in the database. So it's going to stay there for as long as we need it, until we actually go back and delete it. So that's the key step, is we do not want to delete this extract table. Okay, so that checkbox is unchecked. And then I'm just going to extract my information like I normally would in a data mining operation. The organization name, in this case, I've got number of employees, and then I'm pulling out some tracking parameters for those organizations. So relatively simple data mining operation. Again, the key is that we're not deleting this extract table, and we're creating an extract table to reuse over and over and over again. So fairly simple. If I were to pull that out into a spreadsheet, it would show me all of my companies and whatever columns that I have extracted. What this app does, though, is I'm going to go into the settings. What this app does is it says choose your extract table. So there's my extract chart example. So I've chosen that extract table that exists. What kind of chart do I want it in? Right now I've got it in bar chart. You can experiment with these different chart types, but in this case, it makes the most sense to be a bar chart. And then you get to pick the field for the x-axis and the y-axis. The x-axis is the one that goes across the bottom horizontally. The y-axis is the one on the left that goes vertically. So in this case, I am choosing the organization name to be the field on the x-axis. And on the y-axis, I'm choosing number of employees. I can also give the change the label here. So this NOE 2016 num org, that doesn't look very pretty. So let's give it an alias. So I've said number of employees. So if I look at that, that's what I've got here. Number of employees on the left, and I've got my organizations on the bottom, across the bottom. And there's my number of employees label that comes out. So at a quick glance, I've turned this data mining operation into a chart. Rather than pulling it into Excel and doing the work in Excel that Excel would create, this is essentially doing the exact same thing. Really cool part about this is I can come into these settings and I can start changing things if I wanted to. So maybe I don't really care about my number of employees, but I do want to see the goal. So I've changed this to goal, and we'll just rename this goal. I can add a series. So I'm going to do processed. We'll add another series, and we're going to do verbal. And for the finance folks, those are kind of common terms that you'd be looking for in one of these reports. And if I click update, it now goes and changes this chart from showing number of employees to goal, processed, and verbal. And I can see at a quick glance, hey, DuPont's got $626,000 processed. Their goal was only $430,000. So that's pretty cool. I need to go out and reach out to DuPont and tell them great job. Or in this case, Canadian Bearings. Wait, that's same case. I don't have any good data. I was looking for somebody that you might need to go and follow up with. So turning that data mining operation into one of these charts is a really cool tool. There's lots of ways that you can use this. I started experimenting with addresses. So in this case, my data mining operation is also pretty simple. It's just pulling individual accounts for a particular year, and it's pulling their name, their gift amount, and then their mailing address. That's all this data mining operation is doing. And then in my extract table chart, I am putting in, again on a bar chart, the city name across the x-axis and the total raised on the y-axis. So I can see in my database which city is giving the most amount of money. That's what this is telling me, that $133,000 has no city tied to it. Fayetteville has 20,000, Kalamazoo has 12,000, Pittsburgh has 140, and Toronto has 300 or 3,000. If I want to go in and change that, again, similar to what I just showed you, maybe the city isn't enough because, in larger cities, Pittsburgh, for example, has a bunch of zip codes that are in Pittsburgh. So knowing the neighborhoods is a little bit more useful for me. So now I can do this by zip code and see, here are the zip codes. Forget about the cities. I don't care that much about the cities. Here are the zip codes with the most raised dollars. So without having to do any SQL coding or any of that kind of stuff, I just created a simple data mining operation. I've now turned it into a pretty useful chart. Last example that I'm going to show here, and I won't go through the data mining operation, but this is one of the tasks that I had to do on a regular basis when I was a development associate. I had to look and make sure that all of the goals, in most cases, it was actually not the goal, it was the total in was the same as the projections, right? So if I projected $100,000 for this company and they actually came in at 150, I had to adjust my projection up to 150. Or at the end of the campaign year, I'd have to adjust my projection down to whatever the total in was. So I used to run Excel spreadsheets and do an Excel formula to find that. This does that for me. So I can come in here and say, Mario Lemieux, his final was $660,000. I only had him projected for $600,000. So I would go in and change my goal and projection to make that match. So you can set these data mining operations up to run regularly. And before everybody gets in, you can have this run at 5 in the morning. And now you have essentially a report that is actionable right here. The one big key that I really like about this, data mining operations you shouldn't set these up to run like every 10 minutes, right? That's what an Executive Plus query is for. If you need data that is like live, up-to-date data, Executive Plus is much better for that. This is more of I can run it once a day and not have to worry about it. The key with that is it's much less resource intensive than SQL queries. When all of these Executive Plus charts that we were looking at, every single time the dashboard refreshes or it loads, it's automatically running that SQL query and it's taking up a lot of resources. This is only taking up resources when the data mining operation is actually being run, and it's just displaying that data like a static table. So it's not resource intensive. It's really, really good for those reports that can be done once a day, and you can use those charts once a day. You can always go in and run a data mining operation in the middle of the day, but it's more static data than our Executive Plus charts. So that was my cool find of the week, month, maybe year. That was a really cool app that I didn't know existed, so I wanted to share it here as well. And thanks for anybody who stuck around for it. I'm happy to stick around and answer any questions that got asked as well. So Luke, I'll turn it back over to you.
Yeah, we just have one question here. Is there an option to drill down into the details in these charts?
It's going to depend on these charts. So extract table, no. A lot of the other charts that I showed you earlier, the stock ones, it's hit or miss. There are some that you can drill down into. So if I click on, this opportunities chart, it shows me the 2 opportunities that still need some attendees. Let's see, is there no one? Transaction analysis, if I click on it, it doesn't do anything. So some of these charts have actions and they will show an account list. Others don't necessarily. So like this one, we're not going to have a list of every non-ePledge transaction that exists. So it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to put a quote unquote drill down or an action button on it. But this funnel, for example, I do want to see the people that are in each stage of this prospecting funnel. So it will show an account list. So there are some that have actions. Not all of them have actions, and the extract table does not have those actions. Good question.
Perfect. And then just one last question from Sophia. She says for their United Way theme in the chart setting, it only shows the blue shades, but when you were showing yours, it had the blue and yellow. Do you know why that might be?
Yes. So if we go into chart settings, we'll go to the United Way theme. And if I click the little pencil next to the United Way theme, it's going to show all of the colors that are out there. So in color 1, color 2, color 3, you get the little preview. A lot of times what happens is if there's very little data for this orange one, for example, it'll show this one and this one, right? It skips that one. But it's essentially, you can set the preferred color over here however you want. So if you want dark blue to be the first one and then orange to be the second one, then light blue and red. If you want to change the orders around, you can change the preferred sort order over here number. I think that's actually something that you can change that. So I would say if you're seeing dark blue and light blue and then another dark blue, then you can change your preferred sort order, because like this color and this color are almost identical in the United Way world. Same thing with this orange and this orange. So I've purposely reordered these preferred sort orders so that they're spaced out. That's also a good point. You can create your own color themes if you want, or you can add colors to a theme that already exists. So there's all kinds of things that you can do in there. If I wanted to add another color to this one, it doesn't work because it's a restricted one, but I've created one of my own that has a ton of different colors in it, just for demonstration purposes. So you can create your own color themes and use those if that's what you'd like as well.